Thank you very much, everybody.
Mr. President, are you prepared to negotiate with Democrats now?
Mr. President, on Jeffrey Epstein.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys for knowing.
Mr. President, can you respond to these Epstein emails that were released today?
It is in no way an exaggeration to say that Donald Trump and MAGA world and the administration, at the very least, is in panic mode. I know you see that a lot on thumbnails and titles of YouTube videos. Oh, Trump's panicking, but they're panicking. You don't pull a singular Congresswoman, Lauren Boebert, into the Situation Room to try to twist her arm and pressure her to remove her signature from the document that ended up going to vote to release the Epstein files. You don't do that if you're not panicking, the discharge petition. So Donald Trump yesterday held a little presser in the Oval Office, a little publicity stunt in the Oval Office where he signed to reopen the government that they shut down. And at the end of it, he says, well, any questions? Anybody got any questions? And of course, it was a deluge of questions about Epstein and these new emails that we've read, that some disgusting stuff, that Donald Trump spent hours alone with one of the underage victims. We've got emails with Jeffrey Epstein saying, you see, I know how dirty Donald is. The convicted pedophile saying he knows how dirty Donald is. Reporters want to know. Americans want to know. The world wants to know what was his involvement and why is he working overtime to keep the information secret? Is he just protecting his pedophile friends, or is he himself, as many believe, a pedophile, a rapist of children, and now President of the United States of America? And so this is how the presser ended, and you will not be surprised to learn he did not answer any of their questions.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't know if you have questions. I think we really have a really great situation. We have a country that we love, and we have a country that's in great shape. As you know, we have it's over $18 trillion invested in our country by other people and countries. That's a record. There's never been a country that had so much, and that money's going into also building new auto plants, new AI plants, new everything. We've never had a time like this. Thank you very much, everybody.
Mr. President, are you prepared to negotiate with Democrats now?
Mr. President, on Jeffrey Epstein.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys for knowing.
Mr. President, can you respond to these Epstein emails that were released today?
Well done, Mr. President.
Great job.
I will keep the shot. We'll keep.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to be there either, Donald. I wouldn't want to be answering questions about my criminal activity either. Now, let me say this, though. There's another angle of this, and let me tell you why I talk about panic. We've seen dozens, if not hundreds of times when a presser ends and the staffers in the Oval Office, White House staffers, try to shoo the press away. All right, it's done. All right, okay, let's get out. Let's get out. But I'm going to play this angle. I think it's a C-SPAN clip. Watch the staffers on the left-hand side of the screen and watch the abject panic in their eyes. They are frantic to get the people who are asking the Epstein questions out of the room, while Donald Trump is glad-handing with Mike Johnson, who's been running interference for pedophiles for months. But watch the panic on the staffers' faces and just how they are frantically trying to get the press out. Watch this. That's panic. That's worry. That is discontent, to say the least. Now, what this presser was about, obviously, was about reopening the government that they shut down. It was also giving Donald Trump a chance to lie about the state of the economy and ramble like an abject know-nothing about the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, while, of course, doing the classic naming of Barack Obama's full name with the scary middle name Hussein. It's just ridiculous. But let's start with Him lying about the Walmart did a study, he says, and that prices are down 25%, which obviously is a lie. He's not just lying about what Walmart, there's no study. We'll get to that though. Watch Donald Trump really try to bend reality to his will.
And also, I want to thank Walmart because they came up with a fantastic study. It was the cost of Thanksgiving coming up and the cost of Thanksgiving from a year ago under Sleepy Joe Biden. And we're 25% lower this year than we were a year ago. And it's a very inclusive report. So I want to thank Walmart. They've done it for many years, but we believe in that, and we believe in that company.
I also want to thank Walmart. They came up with a fantastic study. We are 25% lower than we were a year ago, he says. What he's talking about is a Thanksgiving box that you can purchase at Walmart, like a meal in a box. You don't have to worry about buying all of the other fixins for Thanksgiving here in the United States. It's 25% less, but it's not 25% less because grocery prices are down. In fact, it's been talked about enough that there's a legitimate fact check from Daniel Dale at CNN, and this is what he found. Cheaper Walmart Thanksgiving meal touted by Trump has fewer items than last year's. President Donald Trump keeps touting the fact that Walmart's promotional Thanksgiving meal basket is cheaper this year than it was last year. But Trump hasn't mentioned that this year's basket is different than last year's, in particular, that it contains significantly fewer items. This year's basket contains 15 products, 6 fewer than the 21 products in the 2024 basket. If you're counting each individual item, like each can of green beans separately, it's 22 items this year compared to 29 items last year. In addition, items from Walmart's Great Value store brand make up a greater percentage of this year's basket than last year's, which included a larger proportion of name brands. As of the most recent Consumer Price Index figures for September, average grocery prices were up 2.7% higher than they were a year prior and about 1.4% higher than they were in January, the month Trump returned to office. Average grocery prices rose 0.3% from August to September after a 0.6% increase from July to August, which was the biggest month-to-month jump in 3 years. One, it wasn't a study conducted by, or as he categorized it, came up with a study. It wasn't a study that was came up with by Walmart. It's just their food basket, which now contains fewer items and not name brand shit. It's the Great Value store brand, which there's a higher profit margin on, and they charge less for. Now, the other thing he did, which is in true Donald Trump idiot fashion, the moron in chief here, is ramble about how he's going to be paying Americans a whole bunch of money so they can become entrepreneurs and pay for their own health care, as though Americans aren't paying for their own health care now. The whole thing is just a masterclass in jackassery from Donald Trump as we become accustomed. Watch this.
But it all includes fixing the healthcare system that Democrats broke with the disaster known as Obamacare. Obamacare was a disaster from day one. It's done nothing but go up. And if you remember President Barack Hussein Obama, when he came up with this crazy idea, he said everything's going to be great, rates are going to go down, payments are going to go down, everything's going to go down. It went the exact opposite, with the biggest increase of healthcare in any country. It's a disaster. And I'm calling today for insurance companies not to be paid, but for the money, this massive amount of money, to be paid directly to the people of our country so that they can buy their own health care, which will be far better and far less expensive than the disaster known as Obamacare. And I've had, I think, great support. I've even had Democrat support. So we want the money that would be going to the insurance company, which is hundreds of billions of dollars. You know, their stock prices have gone up by 1,000% in many cases, 1,000% over a short period of time, because our country stupidly pays them so much money with this Obamacare scandal. So I want the money to go directly to you, the people. And you go out and you'll buy your own health insurance and you'll negotiate different plans and you'll get much better insurance and you will be an entrepreneur for yourself.
Somebody tell me what he's talking about. Somebody who's a Trump whisperer or interpreter, please. I am calling today for insurance companies not to be paid, but for the money, this massive amount of money to be paid directly to the people of our country so that they can buy their own health care. Who, pray tell, Donald Trump, would they be buying the health care from? Would it be insurance companies? Who will be paid using the money that you pay Americans? By the way, there's no details about any of it. It's just him rambling. There's no plan. Every time you try to pin down a Republican on what the health care plan is to replace the Affordable Care Act, it's crickets. We have nothing. Oh, we have a concept of a plan, but there's no plan. And him calling Obamacare a scandal, if adding tens of millions of Americans to the insurance rolls and ensuring that insurance companies can't cut you off your health care because of a pre-existing condition, if that is a scandal, then sign me the f*** up for the scandal, folks. Donald Trump has never had to worry about paying a premium, paying for health insurance. He's never had to worry about where his next meal is going to come from. He's a silver spoon jackass who's never been challenged. There's never been adversity, ever, other than the stress of maybe criminal prosecution because of his crimes. So don't take the advice of a rich guy, a now literal billionaire, about what's best for you, your budget, your health care. If they do repeal Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, and bring back an ability of insurance companies to cut you off your insurance, cut me off my insurance because I had cancer 3 years ago, what kind of a system is this? We claim to be the greatest nation in the world, the richest country on the planet, yet we can't provide health care like every other industrialized nation does. Every single other country does it. And we can't because Donald Trump doesn't want to pay the insurance companies, but he'll pay us so we can pay what? When the perennial question, are Republicans going to wake up here? Because you'll be kicked off your insurance too, GOP. If they end the Affordable Care Act or the scary Obamacare, you're going to get fucked too. You're going to be harmed too. Nobody wants that. Anyway, what do you think? I invite you to this conversation. We can have it in the comments below the video.
These emails prove absolutely nothing other than the fact that President Trump did nothing wrong. And what President Trump has always said is that he was from Palm Beach and so was Jeffrey Epstein.
Well, the panic is not just on the part of White House staffers. It's not just on the part of the Republican Party at large. It's not just on the part of Donald Trump himself. Karoline Leavitt is also in the thick of it. Talk about a job I would not want. Well, one, I wouldn't be in the employ of a credibly accused rapist of children. I would never work for Donald Trump, ever, so I would never be placed in that position. But she has chosen to do so, and now she has endeavored the impossible, which is defending the indefensible. Yesterday, her and Kash Patel got up on the stage, and at roughly 15 minutes, they took questions. For roughly 14 minutes, they took. So like half of it wasn't even a press conference. It was just them talking. And when the questions began, I mean, they do the thing where they throw to the one seat that's going to ask the preordained right-wing weirdo question. And then they open it up to the rest of the actual legitimate media. Of course, the very first question out of the gate is about Donald Trump. And that particular email here from April of 2011, where Jeffrey Epstein said, I want you to realize that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump. This particular redacted victim spent hours at my house with him. So Donald Trump was alone with one of the underage victims of sexual trafficking and sexual violence. For what? And this was a question that needed to be answered. It still needs to be answered because, spoiler alert, she doesn't answer the question.
Ouija.
Thank you, Caroline.
Sure.
I have your statement about the new Epstein emails that have been released by House Democrats. Separate from why you believe the emails were made public, can you address their substance? Did the president ever spend hours at Jeffrey Epstein's house with a victim?
These emails prove absolutely nothing other than the fact that President Trump did nothing wrong. And what President Trump has always said is that he was from Palm Beach, and so was Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein was a member at Mar-a-Lago until President Trump kicked him out because Jeffrey Epstein was a pedophile and he was a creep.
Donald Trump's best friend of 15 years was a pedophile and a creep. Got it. Donald Trump's best friend was a pedophile and a creep. A-OK. Check. The other thing that really draws my attention is that these emails prove absolutely nothing other than the fact that Donald Trump did nothing wrong. Is that right? He spent hours with one of the underage victims? What was he doing? Were they playing Scrabble? Karoline Leavitt? Were they playing Boggle? Isn't that the one where you click the button and all the dice with the letters on them pop up? Is that what they were doing? Just being professional, she said in another clip. How about this one? Does this also totally exonerate Donald Trump that he did nothing wrong? You see, I know how dirty Donald is, said Jeffrey Epstein in an email. Did that also prove that Donald Trump did nothing wrong? It's an impossible job. Here, she really steps in it by trying to convince the press, and then I guess through the press, the American people, that this is just a hoax. This is just, I think she says, manufactured Democrat hoax. By the way, again, another spoiler alert for you. They have not denied, they've not said, oh, these emails are fake. They've admitted that these emails are real, yet they're saying it's a hoax.
And it just shows how this is truly a manufactured hoax by the Democrat Party. For now they're talking about it all of a sudden because President Trump is in the Oval Office. But when Joe Biden was sitting in there, the Democrats never brought this up. This wasn't an issue that they cared about because they actually don't care about the victims in these cases. They care about trying to score political points against President Trump, as we have, of course, seen with this government shutdown. And this entire thing, again, it's not a coincidence to the American people at home. There are no coincidences in Washington, D.C. And it is not a coincidence that the Democrats leaked these emails to the fake news this morning ahead of Republicans reopening the government. This is another distraction campaign by the Democrat and the liberal media, and it's why I'm being asked questions about Epstein instead of the government reopening because of Republicans and President Trump.
Yeah, that manufactured Democrat hoax. Wait, what's this? That's not the right picture. I didn't mean to print a picture of a bunch of right-wing MAGA influencer dipshits holding binders printed by the White House and distributed to them in the Oval Office that say, what is that? The Epstein Files Phase 1? What? Was the White House part of a Democrat manufactured hoax? Huh. That's perplexing, Karoline Leavitt. As perplexing as the performance that you're putting on in the White House press briefing room. Fantastic stuff. Now, she is asked about this Lauren Boebert meeting that took place in the Situation Room in the White House, not in some conference room or in the Oval Office, somewhere safe and secure and away from the intrusion of prying eyes or ears, where the Attorney General of these United States and several high-ranking Trump administration officials sequestered Lauren Boebert to try to get her to convince her to remove her signature from the discharge petition. She thankfully did not do so. But this was an all-out, full-court press to pressure one single sitting congresswoman. This isn't an act of transparency, which Karoline Leavitt's going to try to convince us of. This was just a pressure campaign. And why? Why go through all of this just to have the Epstein files not released? Because the Epstein files, I'll tell you, contain far more incriminating, far more damaging information than these emails that got released yesterday by the Democrats on the House Oversight Committee. It's a big deal. Watch this about the Boebert meeting.
Given your
Reagan.
interest in transparency, Karoline, why are White House officials then meeting with Representative Boebert in an effort to try and get her to not sign this petition calling for the release of the files?
Doesn't it show transparency that members of the Trump administration are willing to brief members of Congress whenever they please? Doesn't that show our level of transparency? Doesn't that show the level of transparency when we are willing to sit down with members of Congress and address their concerns? That's a defining factor of transparency. Having discussions with members of Congress about various issues, and I'm not going to detail conversations that took place in the Situation Room in the press briefing room. Reagan.
I think fundamentally they have a hard time with words and what the definitions of words are. Secretly trying to convince a congresswoman to retract her signature from the discharge petition is in no way transparency. The fact that it got reported and found out doesn't mean you were transparent. And look, we'll end it here. This is how it ends. It's them asking, the press asking a question about the idea that a pardon is being floated to Ghislaine Maxwell. She is currently in a minimum security. She is a convicted child trafficker, sex trafficker, the associate and former girlfriend of Jeffrey Epstein, Donald Trump's best friend. And she's getting special treatment up and down the line. And many believe, including me, that this is all an effort to keep her silent, to keep her happy and comfortable as they can before Donald Trump issues either a clemency order or a full presidential pardon. And you will not be surprised that Karoline Leavitt does not say no, a flat no, when asked if Donald Trump is considering a pardon.
Stephen, go
as
ahead.
well, if the president is considering a pardon for Ghislaine Maxwell?
Again, he's answered this repeatedly. It's not something he's talking about or even thinking about at this moment in time. I can assure you of that. Stephen.
Yeah, that's not a no. It's not something he's talking about or even thinking about at the moment. It should be absolutely not. Why would Donald Trump reward with a pardon, a convicted abuser of children? Why would he do that? That's not the answer. It's, he's not thinking about that right now. Mark my words, she will be getting special, unless Donald Trump dies because of his gravy-fueled cardiovascular system. Unless it's that, she's going to get pardoned because the Republican Party is absolutely, as Hakeem Jeffries has been coining them, a pedophile protection program. This is what they're running. They're attempting to extricate Donald Trump from the public finding out about his horrific crimes against children, or at the very least, his protection of his pals who are involved in these crimes. And it is pals because there are many people that we're now learning through this email dump that are involved, that are in active communication with Jeffrey Epstein up until like 2019. Anyway, what do you think? I invite you to this conversation. It is an important one. You can have it in the comments below the video, wherever you're watching it.
When they're protecting pedophiles, when they are blowing our budget, when they are starting wars overseas, I'm sorry, I can't go along with that. And back home, people agree with me.
Yesterday, Congressman Khanna from California and Congressman Thomas Massey from Kentucky both appeared with Caitlin Collins on CNN. A little inside baseball, a little behind the scenes, a little BTS for you is I was supposed to be interviewing Khanna yesterday at 8 p.m. and instead he ended up on Caitlin Collins. We're going to do it today. We rescheduled. But you know, I don't mind. I don't mind getting bumped for a major television network. It's fine. You know, I'm just a YouTuber. Anyway, some very interesting things were said in this interview, some that I'm going to get a follow-up on when I talk to him coming up. I think that interview is probably going to post at 6. It hasn't even taken place yet, but I think we're going to get it up at 6 p.m. tonight. Very, very important things were said. Some I'm going to get a follow-up on from Ro Khanna, like I just said, but also from Thomas Massie, who seems to be just going scorched earth on the Republican Party, his own party, saying that they are protecting pedophiles, talking about the withholding of swearing in of Adelita Grijalva, the new congresswoman from Arizona, who finally got sworn in yesterday, but was prevented from doing her job, from representing her constituency. Another boot on the neck of democracy in America, of representative democracy in this country. Well, let's begin, though, with Ro Khanna, who said some things that I'm going to ask follow-ups about, but really just getting to the heart of it. This is plain speak. This is real talk from what is becoming a very important member of the House of Representatives.
Yeah, so what happens here when if it passes and it does have that deluge of Republicans? I know you said today you thought 40 to 50 could potentially vote for it. Is that right?
Well, I think the speaker's concluded if you can't stop the parade, you might as well lead it. And so now he's saying, I want to have the vote. I do think that you could get 30, 40, 50 Republicans voting for it, because what are we talking about? We're talking about rich and powerful men who abused young girls and told people in junior high to go recruit others to be raped or abused. That's what we're talking about. And we're saying that these victims want to expose the men who did this to them. Some of these men still have buildings named after them. Some of them still have scholarships named after them. Enough. And so I think when it's actually a vote on the House floor, do you want these files released? Republicans and Democrats are going to vote yes.
I like that line, that he believes that the speaker has concluded that if you can't stop the parade, you might as well lead it. I don't know exactly if that's what we're looking at with Mike Johnson, but it is certainly him trying to save a little face. But the question that I'm going to ask a follow-up of later when I talk to him is about, we're talking about rich and powerful men who abused young girls and told people in junior high to go recruit others to be raped and abused. That's what we're talking about. And we're talking about these victims, and some of them have buildings named after them, scholarships named after them. The natural follow-up from Karoline Collins should have been, whoa, who? Who exactly are you talking about? Because it's obviously not just Donald Trump who is implicated in some of the most horrific crimes against children that can be committed. It's others. The release of the Epstein files isn't just about, let's get Donald Trump. Oh, we're frothing at the mouth to get Trump. It's about righting a wrong. It's about exacting justice. It's about consequence for people who abused the most innocent among us. That's what it's about. And if Donald Trump gets wrapped up in that, so be it. If Bill Clinton gets wrapped up in that, if Bill Gates get wrapped up, what if anybody gets wrapped up in that? Burn them to the ground. Speaking of burning them to the ground, it seems that's what Thomas Massie was doing last night when asked questions from Karoline Collins. And I'm here for it. Look, Thomas Massie is absolutely a right-wing conservative. This guy is not a wokester, whatever that means. He's not a radical left lunatic. He's a far right-wing Republican. He's one of these dipshits that poses with photos with his whole family holding weapons of war around the Christmas tree. He's one of those guys. He's a guy who got up in the face of congressmen when they were talking about gun reform in the halls of Congress. He's not a reasonable or rational person. So when you find him doing this, it must mean that the rubber has hit the road and people in his district aren't going to stand for him protecting pedophiles. Because I don't believe him to be so principled that he wouldn't back Donald Trump's play in this manner if it didn't mean direct harm and a threat to his position in Congress. I could be wrong. I'm open to being wrong, but I don't think I am. Witness this little interaction between he and Karoline Collins.
But when it comes to the motivation here and how MAGA voters feel about this. I mean, you speak to these people. You are someone who has been outspoken against the White House, but you don't generally disagree with some of the things that President Trump does or has run on policy-wise. How do you explain to voters why the president is fighting your discharge petition or fighting the release of these documents from the Justice Department?
Well, I vote with my party 91% of the time, and which means I have agreed with the president 91% of the time. But when they're protecting pedophiles, when they are blowing our budget, when they are starting wars overseas, I'm sorry, I can't go along with that. And back home, people agree with me. They understand, even the most ardent Trump supporters understand sometimes he gets bad advice, sometimes he gives bad advice, and we wouldn't model our lives after him, his personal life, and they're okay with that. I mean, you can still like Donald Trump in Kentucky and like what I'm doing and what Khanna is doing, which is trying to get transparency.
Well, and we were watching Adelita Grijalva be sworn in today, and as soon as she was sworn in, she walked over and signed this discharge petition. Seconds later, you went up and shook her hand, as you noted, before any other Democrats had actually even ever gotten over to her side.
You couldn't hear what I said, but I apologized to her for what my own party did, which was to keep her from being sworn in and depriving an entire congressional district of representation for 49, 50 days, which, I won a special election myself. I think I was sworn in within a week, and there was no reason to delay this other than the petty thing that now the speaker is accelerating. He tried to delay this vote. He deprived a congressional district of a congressperson. And now he says, well, okay, I guess I lost. We'll have the vote next week.
So again, let's drill down on what this question is. I think that's important to do that all the time. How do you explain to voters why the president is fighting your discharge petition or fighting the release of these documents from the Justice Department? What do you explain to your voters, and how are they feeling about this? And he goes on to indict his party, his own party. He's not talking about radical left lunatic Democrats. He's not doing all the Trump stuff. He's saying, but when they're protecting pedophiles, they are meaning the Republican Party. He goes, I agree. I have agreed with the president 91% of the time. But when they are protecting pedophiles, when they are blowing our budget, when they start starting wars overseas, I'm sorry, he says, I can't go along with that. Maybe I'm turning the corner on my buddy Thomas Massie here. I doubt it, but it seems maybe so. And then again, once Adelita Grijalva was sworn in, he was the first person to go over. They show a little B-roll of it while he's telling the story, that he went over to apologize for his own party. And he goes on to describe the same thing I've been banging on about for years, about the boot of the Republican Party on the neck of Democratic representative government. He apologizes. I apologize for her for what my own party did, which was to keep her from being sworn in and depriving an entire congressional district of representation for 49 or 50 days. Maybe Thomas Massie is a wokester. Maybe he is, like me, a social justice warrior concerned about democracy, the continuation of democracy in the United States of America. And then the final nail in the coffin of the Republican Party, as far as I'm concerned, there was no reason to delay this vote other than the petty thing that now the speaker is accelerating. And he goes on to explain. You watched it. You heard it. I got follow-ups for Khanna. I guess I got a couple of kudos for Thomas Massie, but I'd love to know what you think about this. Is this the nail in the Trump coffin, this entire Epstein thing? I don't know. I got a lot of questions for Khanna. If you have some, again, I haven't done the interview yet. Put them in the comments of this video. I'll scroll through, find some questions, and see if we can't get them answered.
No more social justice, no more political correctness, no more toxic ideological garbage that infected the department. No more identity months, no more DEI offices, no more dudes in dresses.
I talk a lot about unearned arrogance of white men. Pete Hegseth is the poster boy for unearned arrogance from white men. He gave a little speech yesterday to the 4th annual Northeast Indiana Defense Summit or something. I think that Northeast Indiana Defense Summit, the Northeast, not the Northwest Indiana Defense. It's the Northeast. Talk about really getting down to brass tacks. And in this speech, like a half-hour remarks that Pete Hegseth made, he made a bunch of, as you would expect, very troubling comments. He talked about he feels like where we are in America is like a 1939 moment, which if you're brushed up on your World War II history, 1939 was the year that Adolf Hitler began his invasion, his territorial expansion. He invaded Poland and began to try to take over the world. It's when they started in earnest the plot and scheme of genocide to eradicate the world of the Jewish population. That's when it started in earnest. And Pete Hegseth this is a 1939 moment. Pretty alarming. And then, as you would expect, he goes into this bigot-laced nonsense, talking about ridding ourselves of debris, clearing out the debris. And we're going to talk about all of this. There's some very troubling, more troubling than the normal dipshittery from Pete Hegseth. Let's watch this clip, and we will break it down and talk about it on the other side.
This feels like a 1939 type moment, or hopefully a 1981 type moment, where America needs to lead and rebuild to ensure that we maintain that peace through strength. Enemies are gathering and threats are growing. We have to prepare now. So if you're putting America first and the roadmap is peace through strength, the third ingredient President Trump has injected is good old-fashioned Indiana common sense. Common sense is back at the White House and it's back at the Pentagon. Common sense means putting warfighting, lethality, as the senator mentioned, training, discipline, accountability, readiness at the forefront of everything we do at the Department of War. That means no more social justice, no more political correctness, no more toxic ideological garbage that infected the department. As I've said before, but we repeat and we repeat because as a good old television host, it takes a while for it to actually sink in. No more identity months. No more DEI offices, no more dudes in dresses. No more climate change. It actually was a thing. It actually was a thing. No more climate change worship, no more division, no more delusions, gender delusions or quotas, no more distraction. As the chairman of the Joint Chiefs puts it, Pete, you're clearing out the debris. That's what it is. We're clearing out the debris from out front of NCOs and officers. We're done with that stuff. It doesn't take a PhD to understand that sergeants don't need sensitivity training.
Pete would be shit out of luck if anything he did required a PhD. Non-smart guy, Pete Hegseth. Talk show host by his own admission, this old talk show host, who's now the Secretary of Defense of these United States. A man who didn't achieve advanced rank while in the Army. He's a major, which, it's nothing to sneeze at. He's a major. It's a higher rank than I was. I was enlisted. I did the actual work when I was in the Marine Corps. Some very troubling things here. As good as a good old television host to the PhD remark, just maligning a specialty, maligning education, maligning intellectualism, whatever. It's just I got common sense. I don't need them vaccines. It's kind of that attitude from someone who's leading a more than $1 trillion budget per year in the Pentagon. This is who we saw fit to go through the confirmation process in the Senate and name the defense secretary or secretary of war. With all of his jingoistic nonsense and weird buzzwords, lethality, he constantly talks about lethality. The only thing lethal that surrounds you, Pete Hegseth, is the fact that you have a real threat of breaking those legs because of how skinny they are. That's lethality. I am more concerned about the 1939 stuff. There's another spot in the speech that I didn't pull because it's kind of really a deep dive, kind of a deep cut, where he's talking about how many troops in the United States military are identifying as Nordic pagans, which is, if you know your white supremacy lore, if you know what fuels the mythology surrounding the Third Reich characters, they all believe that they are Nordic. It's a weird white supremacy deep cut. And he's just saying it like it's a normal thing, when it's a problem. But clearing out debris, he goes into. Clearing out the debris, while leading a Pentagon that is literally erasing the contributions of black service members, of women, of LGBTQ troops, of anybody who's not sufficiently mournful of Charlie Kirk's death. That's the debris in Pete Hegseth's mind. If you're black, you're debris that needs to be discarded. If you're a woman in command, even special operator command, nope, you need to be cleared out. You are debris. If you're gay or trans, no good. You need to be cleared out like debris. And then projection time. No more division, he says. No more delusions, says a high priest in the cult of Donald Trump. A high priest in the cult of doing away with, repealing the 19th Amendment of the United States Constitution, which protects a woman's right to vote. Unearned arrogance. He did not earn this position. He is sufficiently loyal to Donald Trump. His nose is far enough up Donald Trump's asshole that is what earned him the position. He emulates and imitates Donald Trump well enough, never apologizing for anything he's ever done, up to and including the credible accusation that he raped a woman in a hotel room while married to another woman, this mighty righteous man of God. Just another creep. Just another dumb guy who passes off his understanding of the world, his limited understanding of the world, as common sense. Gross. Pathetic. Pete Hegseth is those two things. Gross and pathetic and dangerous. Ignorance can be dangerous, and he has weaponized his, most certainly. I invite you to this conversation. Let's have it in the comments below the video, wherever you're watching it.
Look, the Epstein class needs to go. I mean, this is a class of rich and powerful people who acted with impunity. While you and I know that if you get a speeding ticket, you've got to pay it or you're going to be in a lot of trouble. These rich and powerful people with extreme wealth who had political friends were basically raping underage girls and saying the rules didn't apply.
As promised earlier in the show, Congressman Khanna, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So last time I had you on the show, I gave you just a little bit of shit about how you tend to be the guy who reaches across the aisle, and I talked a little bit about the difference in styles. And I want to kind of retract that and maybe say I'm sorry that I was wrong. Not about the difference in our styles, but about the efficacy of reaching across the aisle. And I think the two things I want to talk to you about today kind of dovetail together, structured around that particular element of who you are as a politician and a man. There are different ways to reach across the aisle. The way that the 7 Democrats and 1 independent in the Senate just did to sell out Americans, in my view, that's not the way to do it. But the way that you're reaching across the aisle with people like Thomas Massie seem to be working in the betterment, or at least with that in mind, of the American people, and holding ne'er-do-wells allegedly to account. So I retract my earlier months ago statement, and I want to thank you. I know I'm going on and on here before I even give you a chance to talk, but we were scheduled to talk last night. You bumped me for CNN and Caitlin Collins, which I will humbly forgive for the fact that you gave me a clip to talk about today. That's in the second element of when I would talk about the Jeffrey Epstein thing. You're the first Democratic member of Congress to call for Chuck Schumer's replacement. Thank you for that, by the way. What was the last straw for you?
Well, thank you for saying that. You don't have to retract what you said. I think that there is a way to build a broad coalition that is populist, that is standing up for working people. And then there's kind of the incrementalist bipartisanship that just preserves a failed status quo. And I have always been for building a broad coalition that is actually serving working class people and a progressive populist agenda. But your caution is actually well taken in terms of what those 8 senators did. And that's was the final straw for me. If you're not going to stand up to protect healthcare, what are you going to stand up for? If you're not going to fight to make sure that a taxi cab driver in Arizona who has cancer, that their insurance doesn't go up from $44 a month to $6,000 a month. I'm sorry, $2,600 a month. That is a true story. I tweeted out the actual premium increase. If you're not going to fight that, then what are you even doing? And so, Senator Schumer's had a distinguished career. We worked together on the CHIPS and Science Act. He helped pass the Inflation Reduction Act, but he is out of touch when it comes to understanding this moral moment. He's out of touch in terms of understanding the pain of working class folks, young folks. And frankly, he's out of touch on foreign policy, which he's been for a long time since he chair-led into the war in Iraq and then on Gaza. So he can stay in the Senate, but he shouldn't be the face of the party.
Yeah, I say this to my audience a lot, that nobody in politics is really entitled to any position whatsoever other than that which the voters give them. And nobody voted, no constituency voted for him to be the minority leader. I think he is not, to put it in Godfather terms, a wartime consigliere. And that is what we call for today with this moment in history. We need someone who is an opposition leader, not a minority leader. So given that is your position, you were the very first, again, kudos. It doesn't take, you're not like some kind of a brave, steely-eyed war hero for doing it, but certainly it's an abrasive thing to do within your own party. You still got to work in the same vicinity as him on the Hill. Who would you have? I got a couple names in mind, but who would you have replace him? Because we can't just name the problem without offering a solution.
Well, I've said before that having a House member call for the ouster of the Senate minority leader is bad enough. Now, if I start naming names, I'm almost hurting them. They'll say, who is this guy in the House telling us how to run the place? But, there are people I like. I like Chris Van Hollen. I like Chris Murphy. I like Brian Schatz. I like Elizabeth Warren. There are a lot of people who I think are more up for the fight. Of course, I co-chaired Bernie Sanders' campaign, and I think he can keep doing what he's doing, going around the country, mobilizing a movement and grooming next generation leaders. But for minority leader, there are a lot of possibilities who I think could get the caucus's support.
Yeah, I agree. If it were, I don't have a magic Khanna magic wand that I was hoping that you might have to just say, bing, that's who it is. But I think Chris Murphy or Elizabeth Warren would be fantastic. If we're really looking toward a new generation, then that would probably be Chris Murphy. So on to the next topic. I think America has a debt of gratitude to you. You tweeted this the other day in response to I just lost it, in response to a New York Times article that the only reason that these emails from this latest tranche of Trump/Epstein emails are now public is because of Lawrence O'Donnell's show, kind of someone on that program giving the idea to subpoena those documents. And you were instrumental, I'm using definitive syllables here, you were instrumental, if not the tip of the spear, for getting those released. Am I correct about that?
Well, look, I don't want to self-aggrandize on this issue. The first thing is the survivors deserve a lot of the credit. The survivors' lawyer, Bradley Edwards, deserves the credit. He was on Lawrence O'Donnell's show, and he said, why isn't someone actually subpoenaing the estate? And I was shocked when I heard that. I said, you mean the Justice Department hasn't asked for documents from Epstein's estate? The FBI hasn't asked for documents from Epstein's estate? So it was Lawrence O'Donnell and his booking team that got that Bradley Edwards. That was a huge coup. And then their team connected me with Bradley Edwards. I guess the only thing I would give my team credit for is that we actually followed up, and we wrote a letter and we pushed to subpoena the Epstein estate. And a lot of times you have people in politics, they love to do the theatrics. They love to go on television.
No, who does that in politics?
There's not as much glory in the quiet work of legislation.
Yeah.
But you know what the Epstein files, both getting the discharge petition and these documents, shows is that when you actually do the substantive work, eventually people notice.
Well, speaking of the reaching across the aisle and working with the other side for the greater good, you're definitely doing that. I got a thing I want to talk to you about relative to your interview last night in the segment that should have been mine, but Caitlin Collins got it. You know, no heartburn here. There are several Republicans. It seems like there's a sea change among Republicans. Warren Davidson from Ohio and Eli Crane from Arizona. These are two right-wing conservative Republican congressmen. Neither of them signed the discharge petition, and both of them have signaled that they're in it for a vote to release the files. What's your sense, and what are you hearing from these people with whom you work on the Hill about what the sentiment on the Hill is about the vote?
I think we're going to get 50 or so Republicans. I'm hoping we can get a veto proof. That's what Massey and I are working the phones to try to achieve. Look, the Epstein class needs to go. I mean, this is a class of rich and powerful people who acted with impunity. While you and I know that if you get a speeding ticket, you've got to pay it or you're going to be in a lot of trouble, these rich and powerful people with extreme wealth who had political friends were basically raping underage girls and saying the rules didn't apply. And it's this class of people, this Epstein class, that has led to the hollowing out of the working class, to the hollowing out of rural America and factory towns, to the widening economic gulf. The American people, left and right, are sick of it. And so Thomas Massey and I have put together a populist coalition to say we want the Epstein class held accountable. We don't want buildings, university buildings named after them. We don't want scholarships named after them. We want them to be humiliated, even if there is no criminal consequences. They shouldn't just enjoy the perks of fame when they've committed these atrocious acts.
Yeah. So if the vote to release the files is successful, and and the DOJ, in my estimation, isn't going to abide by the vote, what's the next step? And do you think that there is a good chance or a better than zero chance of the DOJ ignoring Congress?
Well, first of all, we got to go to the Senate, and the bigger the vote, the bit more pressure on the Senate to act.
Sure.
Secondly, this is not going away because the documents are going to keep coming from Epstein's estate. And now you're going to have all these people in the MAGA base on record saying they want the documents released. I do think eventually the DOJ is going to relent. They've released some documents. They're going to have to release more and more documents. And as more Republicans are willing to stand up to Donald Trump, they are going to realize that this is politically not possible for them to just duck this. Look, it's a very hard thing to get a discharge petition. There are only 28 in American history since 1935. The chance of it succeeding is 4%. This will be about the 9th time that the underlying bill actually passes the House of Representatives. And it is the first time since Donald Trump walked down the escalator that you're going to have 40 to 50 MAGA Republicans vote against him. And that is the coalition that Thomas Massey and I have built. And it's a coalition to say, you know, Trump's become part of the swamp that he said he was going to drain. And we need a new generation of political leaders who are going to take on that swamp.
So I've got a couple of the emails here in front of me, and I'm not going to read them at length, but just the fact that they're in this one email and from April of 2011, Jeffrey Epstein writes, signaling that Donald Trump spent hours with one of the underage victims. And then this other one from 2018 in August, where he says that, you see, I know how dirty Donald Trump is. Were you shocked? And if so, how shocked were you at the salaciousness and the, it's not good for Donald. This might be the nail in the political coffin of Donald Trump. Were you shocked at all by what we learned?
I was not surprised because I knew that Donald Trump had a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. But what I've been pleasantly surprised by is that Republicans are willing now to break with him. And that is because we have a red line in this country. You don't rape or abuse girls under 18. That's something that the country still views as sacred. And now Trump is seen as weaker than he was certainly when he won. And so the idea that we're getting finally a group of people to stand up to him, and that's going to be an overwhelming majority of the House of Representatives, is very important. And look, I have been non-political about this. The first casualty of this was a British ambassador who architected Tony Blair's win. You know, we've got corruption today in Sacramento. I mean, there's a former chief of staff who's been indicted for taking money from a campaign account and using it for personal money. I mean, there's been a machine basically in my own state. So what I'm saying is we've got to stand up against moneyed interests and corruption in American politics. Get the big money out, get the super PACs out. Summerlee and I have a bill to ban super PACs. Make sure Democratic primaries, you can't have super PACs, and start to build a new grassroots-oriented politics. That's something that I think can inspire the country.
Yeah. Well, indulge me one more moment, Congressman. I want to play a very brief moment from your time on CNN last night and ask you to react.
I do think that you could get 30, 40, 50 Republicans voting for it because what are we talking about? We're talking about rich and powerful men who abused young girls and told people in junior high to go recruit others to be raped or abused. That's what we're talking about. And we're saying that these victims want to expose the men who did this to them. Some of these men still have buildings named after them. Some of them still have scholarships named after them. Enough. And so I think when it's actually a vote on the House floor, do you want these files released? Republicans and Democrats are going to vote yes.
So that gives me, I'm glad I got bumped. I know I'm just giving a little dig here, but I'm glad I got bumped because it gave me the opportunity to ask the follow-up that wasn't asked by Caitlin Collins last night. Who are you talking about there? Whose name on a building and scholar? Who exactly are we talking about?
Well, look, the files will come out and that'll speak for itself. The last thing you want me doing is speculating and feeding conspiracy. And I'm certainly not going to be trying to impugn people's reputations before the evidence comes out. But the evidence will come out. And I've talked to the lawyers who've seen these files and they've shared certain names. But what I want to do is make sure that people get to see that for themselves. I do know for a fact that there are people who are prominent who are entangled with all of this, and people will be furious about it. Now, there's three different things. There's some of these men who basically kept being friends with Jeffrey Epstein, taking money from him or giving him money, knowing he was abusing underage girls. That's outrageous.
Yeah.
Then there are some men who actually engaged in raping underage girls. That's the worst. And then there's some who engaged in a farm system of abusing women who were over 18 but still being abused. And my view is it all ought to come out and people should face the consequences.
I agree. Largely, or not large, I think it's unanimous in my audience that I don't care, they don't care if it's a Democrat, if it's a Republican, if it's independent, if it's a rich person, if it's anybody involved in these heinous crimes need to be burned to the ground. Legally, they need to face consequences, the kind of consequence that Donald Trump heretofore has not faced. So thanks for your effort in all of this. I don't know, I kind of smell like maybe you're going to be running for president, and the more capable bodies in the race, I think is good. I won't force you or even try to compel an answer, but thanks for. Go ahead.
I mean, let's see what happens in the future. I certainly have a vision for where I think our politics need to go and our economics need to go. If I could just say something on economic patriotism, I think the Democrats need a Marshall Plan for America, a vision of how we're going to create economic jobs in a world of AI when blue-collar jobs are threatened, when white-collar jobs are threatened, and how we're going to build economic prosperity with a care economy, with the trade schools across this country. But I have never been more proud of being a member of the House of Representatives than this week. It actually showed what you can do as a member of Congress with
I think it showed us all
in a coalition. So, this is a good week for asking me what I want to do. I want to try to be the best possible member of Congress. That's an incredible privilege. It's an incredible honor. You can make a difference. And before the midterms, we still have a year in the minority. And what I want to do is not just come on shows and go on Caitlin Collins, but see how can we do things in this next year to help the American people. One of my colleagues, Sam Liccardo, is working with Kevin Kiley to see, can we get a year or 2 year extension on the ACA tax credits? Yeah, we want it permanent, but can we do something? And I think we need to have that kind of attitude. Yes, we need to obviously resist Trump's lawlessness, but people are hurting. What can we do in this next year without just saying, okay, we're going to wait till we get the majority in the House or we get the presidency? We've got a responsibility to act now.
Let's leave it with that. I wholeheartedly endorse that message. Congressman Khanna, thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And so I wanted to put my foot down and say, you know what? We're done. I'm not going to do it anymore. We're going to stand up and fight for people. We're not going to watch this world burn anymore. And we're going to actually represent people the way they need to be represented, not by billionaires and corporations or people that are funded by them.
Look, the blistering defeat of Republicans across the board in last Tuesday's off-cycle election should have created in you not only relief, but also a knowledge that we are changing hearts and minds about the very real threats that Donald Trump and his policies and his sycophants, the threat that they are to the country and to all of us. Well, I'm here and I'm happy to inform you that there is a new generation of fighters in the Democratic Party who are ready to right the ship and actually serve you and your interests. We need to support together their campaigns and propel them to victory, especially in states that have traditionally been represented by Republicans. Joining me today is one of those Democratic fighters who needs your support, Nathan Sage. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
So, first of all, belated Marine Corps birthday. Our illustrious Corps just turned 250 years old. Other than the fact that you have like a comic book superhero alter ego kind of a name, like Nathan Sage, like that's your superhero you're hiding from the public. Other than that, why don't you tell me, and I guess by extension, the audience, a little bit about yourself and what motivated you, what animated you to run for the Senate in Iowa?
What's interesting, first off, is my Marine Corps plaque actually says Nathan Sega Sage on it. So I'll put that up there. But yeah, for me, I'm just a kid that grew up in poverty in the west side of Mason City, Iowa, where I grew up, right? And like so many Marine Corps, so many Army, so many military that grew up in poverty, I didn't feel like I had many opportunities. My dad was, a factory worker just trying to put food on the table. My mom was a daycare teacher. Only reason she was a daycare teacher because that's the only way we could afford life with my three other siblings. So for me, I knew that I didn't have a lot of opportunity. I didn't know what I was going to do. And then 9/11 happened when I was a junior in high school. My dad was an Air Force veteran. It kind of just pushed me towards joining the military and serving this country, and did that. I got stationed at Marine Corps Air Station Miramar, got there, and then in May of 2004, and by August, it was, hey, you're going to Iraq. And I was there 2004, 2006, got out of the military, got out of the Marine Corps for a short period of time, and I did join the Army as well. But I went up in my hometown, was a mechanic, and I missed the military. I missed what I was doing. I actually called up the Marine Corps, actually tried to get back in and said, they told me, sorry, bud, we're not taking prior enlisted, and I was blown away by that. So I called the Army. Army gave me a $3,500 sign-on bonus. They had to pay me to be there. So I joined the Army.
They were lucky to have you. They were lucky to have you, brother.
Went to Iraq again in 2010. And I realized then when I had a 2-year-old daughter who's now 18, I can't do that anymore. I can't be away from my family. I can't be away from my kids. And I came back and finally realized I have an opportunity to go to college that I never thought I'd have. Used my GI Bill, worked nights to support my family doing that, and got my degree in journalism, mass communication with a minor in leadership, and wanted to get back to Iowa. I've been all over, wanted to get back to Iowa, and got into radio there. So I was working, doing news, doing sports, eventually marketing and sales. And I tell everybody that's when the light starts to come on for me, because I started working with businesses every day. My most recent job was the executive director of the Knoxville Chamber of Commerce, mainly because I started working with businesses after hours and understanding the troubles they're going through in rural Iowa, just trying to keep the doors open, just trying to keep the lights on, just trying to keep a service for the community, and how hard it is. And it reminded me of a lot of my dad just trying to put food on the table, right? And you realize in this scenario in the world we're in that the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. Most of us are just trying to do whatever we can to fight it for the scraps at the bottom, and there's nothing trickling down. And for me, watching my family struggle, watching both my parents die of cancer in a state that's #1 in cancer rates, like it starts to eat away at you, and you start to get very upset with the world you're in and watching it happen, and you're watching good people struggle in this world. And sometimes a moment comes where I think we've all been there, where you got to stand up and fight for what you believe in and say, this is not the way this world is supposed to be. We shouldn't be struggling in the richest country in the world, where 60% of our population is living paycheck to paycheck. And so I wanted to put my foot down and say, you know what, we're done. I'm not going to do it anymore. We're going to stand up and fight for people. We're not going to watch this world burn anymore. And we're going to actually represent people the way they need to be represented, not by billionaires and corporations or people that are funded by them. So that's really the reason I'm here, is because at the end of the day, I've watched from afar, watched this world turn into what it is, watch our democracy hang in the balance, and working class people kind of get lied to and left behind. And
yeah,
I'm done with it.
I'm very, my spirit is buoyed hearing you talk about being a fighter for the working people in this country. I mean, apart from, obviously an election is a contest, it's a competition, there's going to be a victor, there's going to be a winner. Leadership, especially at this level, is about more than just, like, obviously, let me back up. Iowa, the 99 counties of Iowa, which I'm sure if you haven't already, you will visit the 99 counties in Iowa. They need a fighter. But it's also, there's another element of it that is about pushing back, about protecting democracy itself, about actually supporting and defending the Constitution. It is about a fight. What makes you the fighter? What makes you the guy who has what it takes to represent Iowa and, by extension, other Americans who need the help of policy in this country? What makes you that guy?
Well, first off, I already have done the 99. We did over 140 events since August 1st. We've done 10,000 miles in the car, 250 hours. That's what you got to do, right? You got to get out there and actually meet and talk to people. And I think the reason that I'm the fighter is, one, obviously I fought in Iraq 3 times. Like, I took the oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. But at the same time, yes, I've been fighting my whole life just to figure out a path for myself, just to figure out a path for my family, just to figure out how to get through this world where it's not affordable, where it doesn't work for people, and the same opportunities aren't for everyone. When I was in the Army, I had to figure out how to pay for my, groceries for my family with $40 for 2 weeks. Like, my life experiences and the way I grew up, I can resonate with so many people across this state, because they see themselves in me, because they know the struggle is real for all of us. I still pay rent to this day. My wife works at McCoy True Value in Indianola. Like, I'm not made of money at all. I am a person that, if anybody can fight for us, it's somebody that knows what it's like to live in a world where nobody wants you. And that is where I am, where I've come from. And and when I talk to people, when I did the 99, so many people just come up to me and shake my hand and go, you're real, because they're not used to somebody being real with them. They're used to this fake facade that we've all gotten into. And we need real fighters. We need people that are not going to say one thing and do another, but actually do what they say they're going to do.
I wish more Americans knew. We come from very similar backgrounds. I come from the other I state. I'm from Idaho originally. Joined the Marine Corps out of high school, did all that, ended up in politics, working for the United States Senate after I got out. But people don't understand the kind of the plight or the situation of rural America. And Iowa has a unique situation that you people are facing right now, the deleterious effects of Donald Trump's tariffs. I mean, the manufacturing makes up about almost 20% of the economic output of the state of Iowa, and the tariffs, because of aluminum and steel tariffs, they are crushing right now the economy of Iowa. Iowa is the #1 pork producer in the country. Obviously, the ICE, the mask secret police of Donald Trump and the mass deportation effort is harming that particular industry. Over half of Iowa's energy comes from Donald Trump's nemesis, the windmill. So all of these elements of Donald Trump's war on the economy, war on industry, are hurting Iowans. What are your policy prescriptions to not just push back against Donald Trump, but really do offer a solution to the farmers. Soybean is another thing. Yeah. Soybean is a multi-billion-dollar industry for farmers in Iowa, and China, being a major customer, stopped abruptly because of the tariffs. What are you going to do as a United States Senator to offer some hope for Iowans?
Well, I think when you look at it, right, it seems like what we're seeing from this administration, from this big bullcrap bill, is an attack on rural America, an attack on rural Iowans, and then you add the tariffs to it, where you're seeing farm bankruptcies and all the issues that we're having. First of all, we got to start with reversing that big bullcrap bill. Like, we can't lose we can't lose our rural hospitals. That's one thing that when we did this 99, people are very fearful and angry and fearful that they're going to lose their hospitals and have to drive 6 hours just to be able to go to the hospital because they can't have their hospital close to them. One thing that we talk a lot about renewable energy when we talk to farmers, right? When my video when we launched, it said, we built the table, it's time we had a seat at it. What that means for me is bringing farmers to the table to understand how we can fix the issues we're having in our state, especially in regards to the tariffs that we're seeing, in regards to I don't know if you know this, but Iowa is in the top 1% for the worst water in the country. And, the issues with our cancer rates and the issue with renewable energy. I'd like to use farmers as the frontline fighters when it comes to climate change and when it comes to the issues that we're having by incentivizing farmers to do good conservation efforts that we need to slow the runoffs in here, incentivize farmers to consider changing the way they do their crops from row crops to cover crops, because we know in Iowa that the topsoil is actually eroding, and when it's eroding, we're seeing the nitrates more nitrates being put on land, which you don't want to see that because that adds to our problems with our water. But a lot of the issues stem from just the programs we already had being ripped away by this administration. Like putting more money into renewable energy and renewable fuels will give a revenue source for those farmers, and that's the big issue with our farmers in our rural communities is when you have small farms that are mid-sized farms that are doing good, that's when our rural communities do good. So we need to incentivize those farmers and give them new revenue streams. One thing I'd love to see that this administration got rid of is they got rid of the farm to school program, which for farmers in Iowa was a big thing to allow produce to go to our schools to help with the budgets for the schools, so they're not spending so much on food, but also gives a new revenue stream for those farms to keep those farms away. We should be making the farm work harder, not the farmer. So if we have more revenue streams for those farms, we can keep those alive. The problem is, like I said, they're being squeezed so much by these policies by the Trump administration. We have to rein that in. We have to stop that first, reverse the big bullcrap bill, but really incentivize farmers to do good conservation efforts to make sure that they're actually incentivized to do so, and we're actually seeing chances for our rural communities to thrive.
So you are obviously we do share a lot in common. We're both kind of coded Republican. You've got a Republican face. I know I've got a Republican face.
Is that a diss? I feel like that's a diss, but it's also good.
Well, if it is, it's on me too. Yeah. So are you seeing some camaraderie, some more acceptance? Are people gravitating toward you who wouldn't be traditionally maybe a Democratic voter? I mean, Iowa is one of those states. We need fighters like you in a position like this, in a state like this, because Iowa has traditionally been represented by Republicans. And, not in the Senate so much, but some of the worst, Steve King types and these white Christian nationalist types. Joni Ernst herself, well, everybody's going to die. I mean, are you being well received out there in the 99 counties?
I was at the town hall when Joni said that, by the way, at 7:30 in the morning in Parkersburg, Iowa. But yes, actually, so one thing that's interesting to me, it's actually always feels, it's weird, is the people that come up to me since day one have shaken my hand and be like, I didn't know who the hell you were, Nathan, until my Trump-loving Republican son sent me your video and said, this is a guy I would vote for. So that made me feel good. But then when we actually do town halls, and we have people showing up that are Republicans and going, one woman in Council Bluffs, Iowa was like, Nathan, I've been a Republican since I was 17 years old. And the reason I'm sitting here in front of you and listening to you today is because we need people to fight for us. And it seems like nobody right now is fighting for us. And so that's why I'm very excited for your candidacy and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, yeah, I appreciate it. But we went up to Northwest Iowa, Steve King country. And we were told, Nathan, if you can get one person at this town, Cherokee, if you can get one person there for breakfast, it'll be amazing for you. We had like 10 people show up, and like 2 of them were Republican. And then we're in Sac City, which is northwest Iowa. Steve King country. 35 people showed up wearing my t-shirts that say Sage Against the Machine. Like, they know that I am not your run-of-the-mill politician. I am not your, talking points. I'm not going to sit here and do, jokes that aren't funny and crap like that. I am going to speak how
That's
I
my
feel.
job.
Yeah,
You're not going to be stealing my job, Nate.
I'm going to speak how I feel from the heart, from the chest, because I feel like that's what people need more than anything is real authenticism. Somebody that's like I said, is going to not just say something and do something else, but do what they say they're going to do. And people see that in me right away because I don't know any other way to talk. And being real with people is what we need more than anything. And that's why we're seeing both sides of it come together.
Yeah, I agree. And I am heartened. Again, my spirit is buoyed by the fact that there are people out there who are willing to continue to serve. And obviously, having been a Marine, I mean, we've got some bad ones out there, J.D. Vance, but servant leadership isn't just a toss-around phrase. It's not a disposable, it's a real thing, and it seems like you have a heart for actual servant leadership. Where can people find out more information about your campaign?
SageForSenate.com is our website. You can follow us on social media as well, Sage for Iowa. But that's probably the best way, SageForSenate.com. We always tell everybody to go to our website. It also has, like, you go to the event tab, it shows where we're going to be. So when we did the 99, the state looked like it had smallpox because there were so many places we were going to be at. So I tell everybody, go there. You can learn more about me, but also find out where you can meet me.
Well, I'm going to put a fundraising link that I would recommend. I would highly suggest that people get involved in the campaign. If you've got an extra 5, 10, 15, 25 bucks, or, Daddy Warbucks, great. Donate to this campaign. After what we saw this last Tuesday with the absolute routing of Republicans across the country, because Americans are fed up with what is taking place in Donald Trump's administration. We need more people like you, and I'm glad you're here, and thanks for joining me.
I appreciate you for having me. I get a chance to speak from the heart and tell everybody who I am, so I appreciate you just having me.